Hello guys, it's Ryan Ho back with another video. Today I'm going to be comparing 5 IEMs that come in around $100. And we're going to kind of compare these and see which one is the best for you. Now we're going to walk through each one of these through different metrics, I guess, in a sense, but we'll take a look at it through sound and music, and then we'll talk about it in gaming, especially competitive gaming, to see which one of these is the best. What I've noticed when doing this comparison is that each one of them excel at different things, but they're all good, but some excel at different things. And so we'll kind of pick those out and see which one that you'll like the most, because I think certain people will gravitate towards one or another, such as like, really good bass, the Aria 2 really has that. So we'll talk about each one of them and kind of what they excel at. All right, so we have our 5 IEMs. So this is the Moondrop Aria 2. It comes at $90. This one is the only one that comes with a balanced cable and a swappable cable, making it honestly an incredible value on this table. Now we have the Moondrop Aria Snow Edition right here, which is the old one. Honestly, this one is basically destroyed by the Aria 2. The Aria 2 basically does everything this does better. Unless you don't like as much bass, then you might like the Aria better, but if you like more bass, I think the Aria 2 really just is the better IEM. And then over here we have the KiwiEars Quartet. This one is an IEM that actually has tunable switches, so it actually has 4 switches on the back. I guess 2 switches, but you can do up-down configuration, so you can get a lot of different sound profiles out of this one. And then we have the Simgot right here. So this is the Simgot EM6L. This is the one that a lot of people said this is the best IEM of 2023. I think this is a really good IEM, but after comparing them, there's some surprising results actually from this one. And then we also have the Fiio JH5. This one comes in at $80. This one is honestly really, really good. I think a lot of people are gonna like this one. This one's $110. This is also $110. And then Snow Edition was $80. The first one I want to talk about is the Aria 2. I think this one is honestly setting the bar pretty high. The kind of swappable cable, like I said, is really special on this one, but the other thing that makes this one really good is that it has the best bass of the bunch. The bass is dynamic. You can really feel the bass when it hits. It has a really good quality. It's very tight. The bass has a lot of quantity as well, so you're definitely gonna get that fun bass sound, but even more important, this has the best sub bass of the bunch. You can really hear the sub bass on this IEM, which is pretty insane in the detail. It really does sound like a subwoofer. So I've tested this one extensively, and the bass is just honestly in a different class of its own. It's probably one of the best bass IEMs I've ever heard. It compares to the Moondrop variations that I heard before, which is like a $500 IEM. Like, this thing is kind of nuts for what it does. Now, the best part about it is not only the bass, but it also has really good mid-range tuning and treble. I would say the treble is come off a little bit more forward, a little bit brighter in some cases. However, I do think this really is a nice IEM. But the one thing that I think this one doesn't compare to the other two, the Simgot and the JH5, is that it doesn't have as good kind of soundstage and imaging as those two. But in honestly, just pure music sound quality, I think this one is going to be a top contender. JH5 is the next one I want to talk about. So the Fiio JH5 is a really, really nice IEM. It comes with a hybrid type of IEM. It has dynamic drivers for the bass, and it also has BA drivers for its mid-range and treble, versus, this one is a single dynamic. Now, more drivers doesn't necessarily always mean it's better, but in this case, I do think this one has better detail through the mid-range, and the treble is actually less emphasized in general compared to the Aria 2. And the sub bass on this one is also not as good as the Aria 2, but I think the mid-range detail and the more, I guess, natural, smooth presentation of this one really does make it stand out to me as better than the other ones. But the soundstage and imaging is what makes this one honestly a lot better than the Aria 2. If you want to play competitive gaming and you want a nice, smooth kind of sound, this is definitely it. It also has a little bit of a mid-bass kind of boost, so it sounds a little bit more fun in the bass. So this is really the IEM that I think a lot of people are going to like. It's just the smoothest, the safest, with really good gaming performance on this one. Like you could literally pinpoint your enemies. Like I don't know if it really gets much better than the soundstage imaging of this one. So this is really my top contender of not only a nice smooth sound, but as well as for competitive gaming. All right, so let's talk about the KiwiEars Quartet. This is definitely the IEM that I thought was probably the best, like smoothest, warmest sounding IEM I had before I got the Fiio JH5. I feel like the JH5 kind of took its place because JH5 has better soundstage and imaging, has a better mid-range tuning as well, and the bass is also pretty mid-bassy like this one. While this one does seem to have a little bit more detail, but the tuning isn't as good in the mid-range and treble, while the bass does seem to go a little bit lower than JH5. I mean, this is $110, so it's a little bit more expensive. However, I think the mid-range tuning could be a little bit more forward for my taste. But of course, this one does excel at, having those tunable switches on the back, which kind of makes it kind of unique. So if you want to achieve different type of tunings, this is probably the most versatile if you want to play around with it a lot. However, I think the GH5 probably replaces it for me currently. Then lastly, let's talk about this Simgot. So the Simgot EM6L, right? So this is the most famous one, I guess, of the bunch. Well, I would actually argue the Moondrop Aria 2 is more famous. But the interesting thing about this one is that it has multi-driver IEMs as well, similar to the Quartet 2. It also has BA drivers for mid-range, and it has, dynamic driver for the bass. So this is just another multi-driver IEM. This one is probably the best in the sense of it has the best sub bass of the bunch of these, so it goes really deep. As well as the treble extension and the detail, I have to say this one is the most detailed of the bunch. However, in doing my comparisons of this one to something like the JH5, is something I kind of discovered that the mid-range tuning of the Fiio is just a lot more kind of forward. You can hear it a lot better, while the one on the Simgot is a little bit more recessed. So the vocals don't sound as lovely on this one as they do on the JH5, and the treble of this one is a little bit more boosted on the upper end. So some people might get a little bit more fatigued when you're listening to that. So that is the thing about this one. I feel like it is the most detailed, yet it's also the most fatiguing of the bunch on the table. So that could be a plus and a negative. And really, I think if you want the most detailed IEM and the most detailed one, if you want to play competitive gaming, I think this one really is it. However, the treble might be too much, so I'm warning you guys about that. So really, which one is the best one, right? I really think it comes down to these three. And for me, I think the Aria 2 might be the one that squeezes out ahead. If you just like to listen to music, I mean, the balance cable itself is a clear win for this one. But even the tuning of this, like the bass of this is far above beyond anything on these other IEMs. It is really, really, really good on this. And even the detail on this is not bad, but it's actually interesting that the mid-range of this one is, better tuned than even the Simgot. So I actually think this was the pretty natural sounding one for me, but the treble is a little boosted as well in a different area than Simgot. So I feel like the Simgot is more like upper treble. This is a little bit more like lower treble type of boost in when I actually listen to it. But I do think this is probably the most like well-rounded type of sound that you can have. But of course, the soundstage and imaging isn't as good. So for like competitive gaming, this one wouldn't be my first choice. But then I would say the JH5 is probably in the middle of these two, right? The JH5 really has good soundstage and imaging. It also has a super smooth sound. So you're really not going to have any issues listening to this one. So it just makes it honestly a really good and easy recommendation. If you don't know your treble level, then the GH5 is easily going to work for you. And it has a nice mid bass and a lot of detail. I feel like this is the safest pick amongst these three, while this one would be my second pick, and then this would be the third pick for the safest. But this is definitely the most detailed IEM on the table. It has, probably the best if you're trying to play competitive games. It has a lot of detail, and it'll really help you kind of choose out a lot of the sounds and pick them out. And I feel like that is probably the shining kind of trait of this IEM. So in conclusion, really, I think the Moondrop Aria 2 is the bass king if you like a lot of bass. And I feel like it's a really good all-arounder for just music listening. So I think that one will be very popular, especially at its price point and the inclusion of that balance cable. I think this is going to be a really, really popular one. Now for the Fiio JH5, I think that one's going to be very popular if you just want an IEM that's really good for gaming. Also for listening to music where you don't really want too much treble. I think the other ones are brighter versus the JH5 is going to be better for, I think, honestly, younger people who don't like as much treble emphasis. I think that will probably be the most comfortable listen for a lot of people. So I think the JH5 does really well. And of course, for the competitive gaming, it has really good imaging. So I think that part of it will also be really good. And then the Simgot for the people who want, you know, the most detail out of their IEM. I think this is going to be the best one as well for competitive gaming. Well, I think it depends on this one and JH5. I think if you like a little bit of a brighter signature, then you're probably going to like the Simgot better. So I think, you know, in between these two, if you like more mid-range, then you're going to like the JH5 more. And the JH5 is also cheaper at $80 versus $110. So I think that's something to consider between these two. And then obviously the Aria Snow Edition, I mean, it's been replaced by the Aria 2, so you don't really need to think about that one. And then for the KiwiEars Quartet, I feel like this one is a more relaxed, more like a JH5 type of one. But I feel like the JH5 kind of does most of the things that it does, but at a cheaper point, and it does a bit better in most cases. So I feel like the JH5 kind of takes its place. However, if you do want a IEM that has, you know, multiple switches where you can kind of change the tuning a lot, I think the KiwiEars Quartet is also a good option, but I don't think it excels in any one area that these other ones kind of do in this kind of comparison. Anyways, I hope this video helps you guys. Please like and subscribe down below. Helps my videos out, and I'll see you guys in my next review. I do have individual reviews of every single one of these IEMs if you want to find out more detail on them as well. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video.